Home, the gold.
He could be too far. No, he's kicking. Oh, what a catch!
Puts a spicy forehand out in front of Naomi Morcilla.
Wu for the win. Team Canada. Darren Wu!
Santos with the layout grab.
Oh, that fantastic grab. The claws of Chaffer.
Canada just became the world champions.
Hello, Canada and the rest of the world. You're listening to the Huckin podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Theo, who's now back in Toronto, Ontario.
And I'm Danie Proby from Vancouver, BC, and we are your coast-to-coast guide to all things Canadian Ultimate. Speaking of Canadian Ultimate, actually, scratch that. There's one Canadian team there, actually, but you want to talk about how your week was? Because I know you're doing some really exciting stuff. I got to hear the sweet, sweet sounds of your voice commentating. You did a good job, by the way.
Appreciate that. I do appreciate that. My voice is a little worse for wear right now. I got back on Tuesday morning, played Ultimate, practice with the boat boys there, and was maybe getting a little too intense screaming. And so, and then went to a Jays game yesterday. So now my voice is worse for wear, and I'm commentating Saturday. So we'll see how that goes. But yes, a lot of stories to share for sure about it. We'll talk more about UBC in the main event, and then subs only as a preview. I'm going to share some stories as well that is only for subs. So make sure you get on the subscriber train there. But yeah, it was a great time back here in Toronto, settling back into some hot weather when I returned. So BC, is it raining out there? I know we're going to talk about Winnipeg later. There, it's raining over there, but is it raining in BC? What's the weather? What's the frisbee like out there?
No, it's been really nice lately. I think during Provincials, so Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, there's 2 different provincial events here. We thought it was supposed to rain the whole time, and it sprinkled at times, but most of the time it was lovely. So yeah, it's finally starting to heat up a little bit. It's been good. In terms of frisbee, just playing at my own practices. I'm recovered from COVID. Lungs are feeling tippity-toppity notch over here. And most of my life right now is just organizing the U20 women's training camp that's heading to Vancouver. It's June 9th through the 12th. And so it's just organizing billets. It's getting parent information out. There's a lot of stuff that kind of goes on behind the scenes to make these training camps happen. So it's been full on plan mode for me, but I'm very excited because once all these athletes get here and they're meeting each other and we actually get to see the squad together for the first time, I'm going to be elated. I just know it. The talent is muy fuego. So I'm excited. Very excited.
Bringing a different language into play, which I do enjoy. And for those who have not been to a U20 training camp like myself here, are parents supposed to come, or like what does that look like? Like, because you mentioned parents earlier, do parents go to this thing, or they just send their child off, go forth into the other side of Canada by yourself?
So the athletes that had to fly in, so any of them that are from Ontario, Quebec, Winnipeg, for example, they fly in and they're staying with either me or there's 3 other billets. So there's 3 BC players that are hosting anywhere from 2 to 4 other athletes at their places. So kind of leaning on the local families to do their part because the other athletes have to pay for their flights in. So we kind of expect that the BC families are able to help with driving and accommodation and everything. So I think I'm going to be having 6 athletes staying here, which should be quite fun. And it's crazy because the athletes of BC live in North Van. If you know your geography in BC, North Van, I'm in New West, Burnaby, Surrey, Vancouver. It's not like everybody who made the team from here is in Vancouver. So it's going to be, I mean, it is a little bit of a logistical nightmare, but I'm a logistics queen, so I got it.
Yeah, that's good to hear because that's a lot to organize young under 20-year-olds to get from their place in the country to your place safely and to organize the practices, the food as well. That's going to be important, and all like the training that goes with it. So wish you good luck with that. And we were going to talk about that in the news. So we're going to head to the news right now and talk about kind of the different training camps happening. World Games Hall of Fame. Lots of good stuff coming. World's requirements. Head to the news right now.
We now have breaking news.
As Theo said, the U20 training camp is coming to Vancouver, so I don't really need to talk more about that, but sort of news. It's personal news, so maybe it should have gone in the last segment, but I'm flying to Quebec. By the time this gets played on the air, I'll probably be in Quebec. So I'm going to be doing my first training camp with cold before World's Masters. So I'm going to be flying out just for the weekend, and we're going to be doing some games, some practicing, and a spike ball tournament, I believe. So I'm very excited for that. That's newsworthy, right, Theo?
I mean, the real newsworthy thing is the spike ball tournament. So keep me
Agreed.
updated on if you win that or not.
I'm very competitive, so hopefully my partner does not disappoint me.
You're shaming them on the podcast if you do lose, is all I'm saying right now.
Yeah, well, now I gotta perform too. So, speaking of performing, the World's Game roster has been set. I'm not sure if it'll be public by the time this airs, so we are actually not able to discuss specific things about the roster. But when it does drop, we'll cover it. We'll get all up in it. We'll kind of talk about who we think really popped off rather at the training camps in order to get seen by the coaches, why we think they made certain decisions, and potential snubs. So I know for a fact that there's a couple people that I thought would have made it that potentially didn't make it. So it's going to be quite interesting to kind of dive into all of that. Thea, what are your thoughts initially on that topic?
Well, I have thoughts that were shared by you off the record. So really, my thoughts are null publicly because I have thoughts in here, but can't share them out there. But I know they're going to be heading to a fun tournament that I know some of you have been able to play, Poultry Days. And from what Danie, correct if I'm wrong, but it's a pool with USA, Ann Arbor Hybrid, and Madison Noise. From what I know, that could change. But I know Ultiworld's actually getting a camera out there because I know the person who's going out there to film it. So they're going to be filming that game. So that's really exciting. They've done that before. There's been Canada USA showcases at Poultry Days in the past, and everyone just kind of crowding around the fields. Good atmosphere eating that chicken. So hope to see some good results there and kind of just get a feel of what the team is looking like compared to obviously the title favorite in USA.
Yeah, now I know that part of the deal with being selected to the World's Game roster, the World Games team, not this kind of more selective roster of 14, but the kind of bigger team that's been training this year. Part of the deal was that they would go to these training camps and that they would commit to this tournament as well. So I know Ultimate Canada had to solidify their roster within a certain amount of time, and that had to be before Poultry Days. So definitely an interesting dynamic going to that tournament where you have players on the team that maybe a little bit heartbroken that they don't get the opportunity to compete in Alabama, but just being on that team in general is such a nod to their talent. And I'm sure I can't even imagine how fun it must be to be able to play with that many players at that level. So just like, it's a huge compliment to anybody who's on that team. You are the top of the top, and we look forward to seeing you play at Poultry Days.
Yeah, that's good luck. That's all I gotta say. And also for those watching the game, because you're gonna subscribe and watch it, you can kind of take the results with a grain of salt too, because like I suspect both teams won't be showing everything. So it's like maybe probably playing offense, playing defense there, Danny. They're not going to be doing too much to kind of give away secrets for later because they are in the same pool at World Games.
Yeah, I would suspect. But sometimes, like if you're going one-on-one in space, it's not like this specific trick that you learn in the off season is going to be game changing. But I'm sure there's going to be specific matchup things that they're going to be working on that they might not showcase right away. So you're absolutely right. So equally as talented, equally as high level, we have junior provincials happened in BC. So it was really exciting. So Thursday and Friday was our BC School Sports Provincials. So all the top 16 senior teams got to play. Lots of the games were streamed. I actually got to commentate the finals, which was really fun. So congratulations to Eric Hamber for winning both the junior and senior kind of tier 1 AAA provincial title. Grand Forks ended up winning senior AA. So that's not a place in the lower mainland. It's really exciting to see a team come from outside of like the Vancouver, Burnaby, Surrey area, Richmond area in order to win. It was really, really cool to see new teams kind of popping up. Same thing as South Kamloops. Huge shout out to all of those teams, the junior team and the senior team. They placed super well. It's very exciting and good for the sport. And also congratulations to Stratford Hall for winning Tier 2 juniors and for Burnaby Mountain for winning senior Tier 2 juniors. Burnaby Mountain was the high school that I started coaching at back in the day. So a little bit of a soft spot for them. So yeah, that was provincials. I know most people that listen to this podcast are like, who cares? A little bit. And that's okay.
No, I think it's the future. And you know, as you were talking, I was pulling up because I was told in one of the YouTube comments, which you may have seen, that it's sad that, you know, BC has provincials, but then Ontario doesn't. But that's actually not true. So there was a tournament. We'll get to that as well. Carlo Di Filippo, actually the tournament convener for that. But back to this tournament specifically, I got to ask you, you had predictions, remember? Did those came true, correct? Like you predicted it correctly?
I predicted the hammer sweep, but I don't know if that was like the most gutsy prediction.
It's still, but it's 100% accurate though.
Yes.
Well, there you go.
Yes.
And yeah, and you know, give some insight here to the audience. You got on the mic. I know it's not your first time on the mic, but you got on the mic. What was it like to be able to bring high school action, obviously, to some parents and folks that maybe weren't able to watch it live, you know, in the venue? So you were able to commentate, I believe, with Emma Young, who's been on our podcast.
Good memory.
So clearly I've, I watched a little bit. I won't say I watched too much, Danie, but I say I dabbled and at least knew who your co-commentator was. So tell us what it was like.
Yeah, it was really fun. I'm really close with Emma Young, so it made it really easy to actually commentate with her. And if anyone knows her, she's the type of person that will do her homework. So she went around and she was getting lots of notes from the coaches. We sent out a Google form to a bunch of teams to get some more information on the players. So she had a whole spreadsheet of stuff to talk about. It was just a pleasure and a joy to be able to commentate with her. On the other game, the AA game, it was Ari Nidikman and Sahab Ansari commentating. We could hear them and they were being a bit goofier, whereas Emma and I were trying to be slightly more professional. But Theo, I am curious to know your thoughts because neither her or I have very much experience, but it was fun and we would like to do it again. So I would like to hear your open critique.
Well, this is going to be awkward because, like I said, I didn't watch that much of it to be able to give a critique because I feel like so here's my PSA to those who critique commentary because I do it too. You got to watch you can't just watch one clip or like a point or like a few points. You actually got to watch like a couple games, in my opinion, to like give good feedback to a commentator because, like, for example, a game I commentated at D3 Nationals was like probably 60 or 70 turnovers in the game. Like a lot of turnovers because it was super windy. So if you were to judge my commentary for that game, it would be very different than a game that has smooth holds and like everything's flowing really well. So you got to look at the different game scenarios that take place. So that's my way of copping out and not giving you feedback right now.
Okay. Hey, so one funny thing when we're going to talk a little bit about this later, but it has to do with commentating. But Traffic, we were watching the UBC game versus UNC, and you and Charlie just kept talking about the front cone. And so it became a meme with our team. And so like everyone's like, oh, like really funny things about the front cone. And so now there's like a sexy cone emoji in our Slack. So I really want to thank you for bringing that light and joy into our lives.
Yeah, we'll talk about that game more because UNC was definitely hitting that front cone in that game, and Charlie and I were talking about it a lot. But we'll get to that once we get to the main event here. But kind of some news out in my neck of the woods, even though I wasn't there for it. The OFSA, which is like the, I guess, governing body of like Ontario provincial sports in terms of like the provincial competitions. It's called a festival, so it's not actually a tournament. I don't know. I would have to do more research on this, but it's called Ultimate Festival. Either way, Adam Scott, your gold medal winners. I don't know who's on that team, to be honest, but they're the winners. Sir Winston Churchill second. Etobicoke Collegiate, the former school of one Phil Turner from the Toronto Rush. So there you go. And your Antique winners, I'm not sure what Antique is. Maybe that's fourth place or like consolation. But Bowmanville taking it. And there's a few Bowmanville players on that Toronto Rush team, as I just talked about Phil Turner earlier. So that there is stuff happening in Ontario, and then we're going to get to some Winnipeg news, and there will be some provincial talk as well. So I know we talked about Pioneer Valley Invite last time, and the fact that there's more things happening kind of in high school is pretty cool. So yeah, kudos to those running it, Carla being one of them, and making sure that was happening. We're going to move into Hall of Fame stuff. So I got a message from Mr. Andrew Portwine asking me to give a quick PSA if possible to let people know that the nomination period will soon be open. So stay tuned to social media and their website for details. He says, pump up the Hall of Fame for us so we get nominations. So get your nominations in, folks. Nominate your founders, players, builders, and team. So those are the categories, Danie. Have you ever voted in this process or thought too much about it?
I voted for players. I don't think I've ever voted for a team or a founder or anything like that. I think I definitely am more aware of players and builders in the sport than anything else, but it's a huge honor to get nominated, and it's a huge honor to get inducted. So I highly suggest everyone kind of keeps their eye out on this and recognize people in the sport that make things happen, because there's a lot of people doing stuff, especially behind the scenes, that kind of goes unrecognized and unnoticed. So these are the kinds of ways that we can kind of tip our hat to these people and show them that we appreciate everything that they do on and off the field.
And even just looking at the team category, like you can't just be like a one-off team here. It says longevity. So you need to have excelled for many years at the national and international level. Yeah, there's some, rare circumstances that might not be the case, but for overall, the team stuff, the builders too, like we talked about some people that were builders that got voted in recently, and they've done a lot to help with Ultimate in the places that they are. So Fish being one of them, developing Ultimate in Quebec and building up that Iris program. That's pretty cool, and we want to see more of that. So get your votes in, or I guess get your nominations in, then vote.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's other news, which is exciting. So the kind of requirements for the rosters for World Guts and World's Masters have changed. And I know that sometimes change is scary, but change can also be good. And I know that there's a lot of really high quality, high intelligence people that have been working on this problem about what to do. So in years past, basically, if your team would win CUCs the year before one of these Worlds events, you'd kind of either be the majority of the roster for Team Canada, or you'd be like the selectors automatically. And you could pick players from kind of across the nation. And so the year before with these Worlds events, all of a sudden, all of these top teams would be back at nationals at CUCs again. Okay, so it kind of does change the event, and people like it when those teams and those players are at CUCs in general. I know we've kind of talked about this on our podcast before, but for 2024 Worlds and Worlds Masters, Ultimate Canada is going to be moving to a new selection process for these national teams. So the coach selection committees will now establish these independently from the results from CUCs, which is interesting. It's totally new. So what is going to be happening? So for the coach selection, the head coaches for the senior team, so mixed, open, and women's, and the masters divisions will be selected through coach selection panels established by the Ultimate Canada High Performance Committee. So it's not going to be the team that wins, that coach is automatically kind of grandfathered, grandmothered, whatever in. So then they will be working with the coach selection panels to select assistant coaches. So a little bit more of a traditional kind of national program. So moving a little bit away from kind of how Ultimate's always done it. Now for player selection, head coaches will be responsible for selecting their team, but 80% of the roster must be comprised of people who were properly rostered for CUCs as a player the year before. So they're not necessarily saying that you have to have been on this team, but 80% of the people that make up your team needed to be at that event. Now, Theo, I know that there are some exceptions. Do you remember what any of the exceptions are off the top of your head?
Well, one of them is, pregnancy. So if you're pregnant the year before, that, that might make it difficult for you to play. Extenuating, injuries or things like that. I'm sure there could probably be an exception made if you were studying abroad, let's say. I don't know. I don't want to speak for them, but that could possibly be another one. But sort of as you're discussing this, you may have remembered, for those who have been following us since day one, our day one fans out here, Morgan Hibbert had talked a little bit about this and hinted at something like this, like kind of like prophesying it in advance. So this is actually now coming to fruition, Danie. So I'm going to flip it on to you and ask for your initial thoughts, because this will impact you if you want to, try out for Masters again. This will impact you. So, what are your initial thoughts in sort of the new process that is similar to other countries? Honestly, like the US has moved to this model the last few cycles and have a true tryout, both East and West, and then and those things. So, what are your thoughts?
I understand that the high performance committee is going to be sort of juggling competing goals. So they want these CUC events to be awesome. They want to encourage Canadian players to play in Canada in Canadian events. So I do understand that part of it. And on the other part of it, they also want to create a structure where we are able to select the best team possible. So I think that they found a nice kind of happy medium. 80% initially feels high. And so I am kind of curious about that. Maybe we can have somebody kind of on the podcast to talk a little bit about how that meeting went, because I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision. I'm sure it took a really long time. What about you? What are your initial thoughts?
This is quite fascinating to me, because there's like two things at play. You got the people that normally don't play this tournament, right? Like as you mentioned, like Goats not playing this tournament, or like Furious or some other teams like that, or Sixers. So then what do you do? So who are they going to play for the year before Worlds is like, are they going to play for these other more mid-level regional teams that are pretty good, but like haven't made it to that next level? What does that mean for the bottom of those rosters in those years that normally they'd be on that team? But since all these people need to make this requirement, they get pushed down and don't make that team. So I think there's like a lot of different factors at play with that. I love that. I'll say the thing I love is the fact that it's like true selection. It's not like the winning team. I love that. I'm not so sure about the 80% model, because I think that's going to potentially impact some of the, like I said already, the fringe teams that are like kind of like close, but like they're going to get the benefit of these good players, but then those lower players are going to be affected. So, it'll be interesting. I love the selection model, though. I think that was long overdue, and we talked about that already. So
one thing that I think is what I like about it is, okay, so say in 2020 for the Masters team that won, it was a team from Quebec, and they had to take a minimum of 7 out of region players. And so it was really hard for somebody to make a mixed Masters team that wasn't from Quebec that year. And I was lucky enough to get that spot. So what this model is saying is that you can still go as Traffic, as Furious, as Sixers, as Goat to the CUC event, but the pressure to win it, so you control the national team, is less. So it's still promoting those teams to go, but it's a more equitable selection process after the fact. So I think that's kind of like the edge there, is that, say in that circumstance in 2020, where it's the majority players come from one region, it just wouldn't be like that. But you could select anybody from any of the teams that went, I guess, is kind of the thought behind it. And that makes sense to me.
Yeah, that does make sense. I think one of the other arguments that we heard from, I believe, Hibbert as well, or it might have been Bobak, who's also on that same episode, was that the cost factor, right? So, like, for example, CUC gets hosted a lot now in Brampton because that's one of the best venues, at least out east, that can host that many teams. So if you're Furious and you're going to, Worlds, you're going to, and you're Traffic, and you're going to these tournaments, right? You're going to US tournaments, you're going to Pro Flight or whatever tournaments you're going in the TCT. You're having to travel to those and then also travel to Ontario. It's just it's an extra burden on those teams. So I think that's something to consider as well. I'm not saying this is like totally bad. I'm just putting out something as something to consider. So
if you're from Vancouver and you're thinking about putting in a bid to host 2023 CUCs, get on it so that Traffic and Furious can go more inexpensively. All right. Do you have anything else to say on that topic? I know you have other updates that you want to get to.
No, I think that's good. I mean, you can chime in with your thoughts. You can email us or send us a message on the IG there. We'd love to hear what other people say because obviously, like on the Discord or Reddit, it's more like American Ultimate that gets discussed. So it'd be good to get some more discussion going about it. So send us your takes, as hot as they might be.
Even lukewarm takes are fine with us.
All right, we're gonna move over to our resident Winnipeg reporter. So Stephen Crew, you get a shout out as our Winnipeg reporter. You don't get paid, but hey, you get to the clout of being announced on the podcast. So General Strike roster not out, but I've been told they're headed to the Pro Elite Challenge. I don't know where that is this year. Danny, do you know by chance off your top of your head? Pro Elite Challenge is happening. They'll be going to that, and then they'll be going to CUC. Fusion going to be playing a World's Tournament in Ottawa with some of the other top women's teams kind of around. So Salty, Iris, Sixers, Stella, I believe, are the teams going. They'll also be going to Worlds and CUC, and then PBHG had an awesome opportunity to commentate them in the finals. They're going to Worlds and CUC, and then Grey Owl as well. So kind of the update there is rain-soaked fields, I was told, is making it hard for them to practice. So that's all I'm saying. Their juniors program, Danny, this is going to be close to your heart. Tryouts postponed 3 different times due to rain. So that's like not a good thing. Their second day of provincials was also postponed due to rain. So at the time of this recording, so tonight, I'm told Kelvin is going to be playing SJR. So if you know any high school ultimate there in Canada, you know those are big powerhouse names. They'll be playing Westwood in the final. So that's news update there. Danny, I know we got some updates here on our Instagram from out more in the prairies as well. So I know Cora sent us an update, and or Flurry, I should say, just read it briefly here.
Well, first of all, the tournament you're talking about is in Colorado for Strike.
Did you just look it up?
Yeah, because I think that Travis going to that too. So I was like, this rings a bell.
So it's Colorado. Nice.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's not too bad for Winnipeg, like in terms of traveling.
And it's also beautiful. So
is it Boulder? Do you know?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, Aurora.
Don't know where that is, but you want to add something else there, Danny? I know high school ultimate's near and dear to your heart, so.
No, I mean, both Kelvin and SJR are incredible. I was just watching some footage that Will Conrad, the head coach of the U20 team, put together of those teams playing in order to do some game analysis. And I was watching them play. I'm like, they look like elite adults. And it's a high school team. So I don't know what they do in Manitoba, but those high school teams, like the ones where the ultimate hubs are, it's insane. I mean, they had in the footage, there's Cassidy and Megan Gillis, if you know them they were on U20 in 2020, and they're just, it's how does one or two schools produce so much talent? It's insane.
Yeah, good luck to those teams. You'll already have played by the time this episode comes out, so really that good luck message is kind of mute, but that's okay. Fleury there was a tournament out there in out in the prairies. So Berta, the women's masters team, coming in first, Fleury second, Wild third, Cora taking the 4th spot, and then a team called Calgary. I don't know if that's the B team or just the university, but Calgary 5th. So we always want to give love we don't want this to just be Vancouver, Toronto. So we're going to make sure we get some prairie, some love here, and talk about that as well. And then there was also a small tournament in Nova Scotia. Red Circus beating Dead Circus, which is one of my favorite Masters teams' names, in the final. And then Jerk Factory, a team that I've heard of from a pickup team from New Brunswick, taking down Madhouse in the 3rd place game. Madhouse, a team that's actually going to be traveling to Montreal for a tournament for Jazz Fest. So love to see them making the commitment to develop their players by, traveling pretty far to Montreal to play this open tournament in a couple weeks. So, shout out to the East Coast as well as the prairies. And Danny, final updates here for the news before we get talking about UBC is AUDL update just happening recently. Montreal snaps the losing streak. They defeat Ottawa on the road in a rare Wednesday night matchup. So if you weren't doing anything, you could have watched some Ultimate. Toronto dropped a close one to DC. I wasn't there for it, but Julia Peden and JJ Edwards in my stead brought in the commentary and did enjoy listening to that. So they lost by 1, and then Ottawa faced a hard time against New York. Let's say that, because New York is just very good. So that's your resident AUDL update. And yeah, we're ready to talk UBC and hit the main event, right, Danie?
Right.
This episode is brought to you by Be Ultimate Apparel. Based out of Vancouver, BC, Be Ultimate is climate neutral certified and designs products that are built to perform. I personally love my 2 Be Ultimate Sun hoodies, and I rock them wherever I go. If you want to learn more about Be Ultimate, start your custom team order, or check out any of their ready-for-purchase collection, you can head over to beultimate.ca.
This is Jamie Millage from Hound and Team Canada. Bad decision? Looking off that reset to throw the high stall hammer. Good decision. Listening to the Huckin podcast.
You want it? We got it. Main event, UBC. We're going to break down all of the action. Theo, you were there in person, but I had the distinct pleasure of being able to watch the stream game. So shout out to Ultiworld. Shout out to the commentators for bringing all of that action into our living rooms, because it was so fun to follow along with our teammates and our little friends and people that I've coached over the years. It was very exciting to watch the streams. So I know we talked about this on the podcast last week, but UBC was definitely in a very, very tough pool. Would you like to break down kind of how their days went for us?
Yeah, I mean, the first story I'll say is I got on a golf cart here with a resident volunteer, and his name's Gronk, and he drove me past UBC. I was like, I gotta get to UBC before I commentate. So I drove by. I'm just chanting like UBC, UBC, and they're all like looking at me kind of funny until they realize, oh, it's the Huckin host. Like, he's like stoked. So, anyways, I didn't actually get to watch their first game, but clearly by the score line, they had their way. I looked a couple times kind of over into the distance to see their game, but 15-5, Virginia kind of just overmatched there to UBC, which then brought up the stream game, which I'm sure Danie had a chance to watch. Yeah, I mean, I was told obviously to not be a homer, so if you listen to the broadcast, I try my best to not just say UBC is amazing.
Actually, funny thing on that, to interrupt you.
Yeah, go.
Because our people are like, what team are these commentators on? So you did such a good job of not being a homer that you couldn't even tell that you were from Canada at all.
Danie, I will
Neutral.
say this. I was trying to be neutral. Apparently, I'm told I have a Canadian accent by one of the Ultiworld team members who asked, Lindsay Sue said, who's the Canadian on the D3 stream? So apparently I sound Canadian. There you go. But
interesting.
I didn't know that. So I will say there's a little bit of my heart that it did hurt for me to say Carleton Syzygy wins over UBC. Like, it hurt a little bit. I will say that, but I had to give people the honest truth, which is Carleton won. And Danie, you had a chance to watch that game. Any major takeaways from that? Obviously, we'll talk more about the kind of the other games afterwards, but that game, UBC, was in the lead for most of it, and sort of had the upper hand at times, but then Carleton throwing a little comeback in there.
Yeah, so it was it was a pretty fun time because I was at Surrey Newton Athletic Park watching high school provincials in the stands while streaming the game on my phone, and like multiple people in the stands were also streaming this game too, and it was really exciting because like the first bazillion goals, Mika Kurahashi either threw or caught them, and so she had a really strong game against Carleton. It was really exciting to see. Same thing with Anna Gaudu. She was fire the whole weekend. It was really fun to watch them, but definitely a heartbreaker. I think if you're watching it, I think UBC struggled a little bit on containing upline cuts, kind of containing and kind of forcing away the kind of handler dominator stuff that was happening. But in general, I thought that they were really positive. They brought a lot of energy. They seemed like they were having a really good time and that they were really supporting each other the whole time. And they're like cuts and hucks and everything just looked so great. Like they were so fun to watch the entire time. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, and that led to their kind of like, that ended their day one. So their day two started with, a spicy matchup with UCSD, a team that many obviously were thinking of making into the quarters. And that game is actually filmed. So you can, if you're a subscriber, so we're going to keep pushing that. If you're a subscriber, you can go back and watch that game, but UBC ultimately falling. I was actually commentating during that time, so didn't get a chance to watch that game. But they go down 14-11 and, feeling a little bit down because of that. But able to kind of get back into it and take out, once again, another kind of overmatched team, being a little bit of a homer here as I say that. But 15-4 over Colorado State Hells Bells to finish 2-2 in pool play. And
15-4 is commanding. Like, that is a team that is angry coming back, being like, let's push this puppy's head under the water. So it's hard to come back after a tough loss like against San Diego. So really kudos to UBC for being able to just kind of handle their business in the next game.
Yeah, and I kind of want to, I'm going to do a little bit of a segue because I want to talk about UCSD for like a quick second because I had a chance to commentate that game where they lost to Carleton here in the pre-quarter. In the pool play game, which essentially...
I see.
Which essentially was their game. Like, the winner of this game, because of UCSD's win over UBC, the winner of this game was going to win the pool. And so I remember talking to the UCSD coach beforehand, and it was this like push and pull of how hard do we go before we actually like not go so hard, because we have to play a pre-quarter right after this, like at 5, and the game was at 2:30 local. So Carleton ends up winning pretty like well, like they kind of dominated from start to finish, and UCSD has to go play that pre-quarter, and they end up losing that pre-quarter. So it's got to be tough for your psyche to like have a chance to take the pool, and then like 4 or 5 hours later, you're out of the bracket.
So if UBC had won that game against San Diego in that circumstance, and they finished second in their pool, who would it have been? It would have been Tufts then. So they would have pre-quarter have been, would have just been where San Diego was.
UCSD spot, yeah.
So they would have been playing against Tufts and then California Santa Barbara instead of having to place.
Could have been a path. I'm just saying.
An easier path for sure. So break it down. So in pre-quarters, we have UBC playing against California Davis. So they end up kind of winning that game again with a pretty steep margin in terms of college standards. Like a very convincing pre-quarters win. They've locked themselves into a top 8 spot. But they ended up facing the number 1 seed, who's kind of like the little demon of this event, because they ended up winning college nationals in the fall as well. So they're definitely the favorite. And so they ended up playing UNC. And what did you think of that game, Theo?
Well, all I got to say is a lot of people in the Ulti world were very impressed with this player in particular. And I'm sure you can guess who that was. But she was slicing and dicing in the handler space and just kind of making throws to make the offense move. So Maddie Ong, I know, talked to her afterwards. She actually had UBC versus the world on like one of her like practice tank tops or whatever, and it says like #Huckin, like, so bought into the narrative that we talked about. Yeah, so I gotta show you this. And it's like UBC versus the world because we talked about that. So big kudos to you for doing that. And
I love you, Maddie. You're the best.
Yeah, she was slicing and dicing.
She's so good.
Go back and watch that game because. When she was on, even on, especially on defense, moving that defensive line over, that was important for them, and we're able to get them breaks. I know I'm not going to, repeat everything I said on the commentary there, but Charlie and I were definitely discussing about UBC possibly crossing over some of those players earlier in the game. And then also something, obviously, if you watch the game would note is their handler core of Teresa Yu and Alex Barnett, along with Ella Jungst, is just deadly as a dominator because they ran that multiple times, and it just looked like it was unstoppable at times, as you probably saw there, Danie. It was just it was a sight to behold, just seeing those three working together.
Yeah, it was definitely a strong game. UBC they were getting turns and everything, and they just didn't quite capitalize on them early enough. Again, the game was super exciting. I also want to do a shout out to Denie Sue because I thought on D-line her pulls were amazing, and when they did get turns, I thought she was instrumental kind of getting the pace of the game moving. Obviously, Maddie Ong was amazing as well, and Andrea Moyer, who's kind of the taller player on their D-line, was just grinding, working really hard. She got a couple run-throughs and a goal in the tournament that I saw that she just looks so fast and aggressive and everything, and I think the future of this team is bright.
I mean, it's tough, right? Because you have a returning Ann Worth, who's one of their top players that doesn't touch the disc that often because of that dominator set. And then some would say their best players on D-line in Don Colton, who wins the Callahan. So it's a tough beast.
She's pretty good.
Yeah, tough beast to deal with. And you probably already know this, folks in the audience, but UNC does win in a thrilling game, by the way. So I know, this is something we'll have to discuss as well, because I definitely got some messages. I know you probably did too, Danie, about people just complaining that they couldn't watch it. So I will never advocate for pirated streams openly, but I will just say, do a search and you may find some treasure. That's all I'm going to say of trying to watch those games. That's all I'm going to say.
So after UBC loses in quarters here, they don't keep playing it out.
Done.
So they finish tied for fifth, or something.
I think it's more of a club thing. I was asking Charlie about it in the car because I was like, do the teams normally just play it out? Because I know, so basically if you lost in pre-quarters, I guess you tie for, what would be, ninth? And then if you lose in kind of that consolation game, like if you finish 4 or 5 in the pool, if you lose that, you tie for 17th. And if you win that, you tie for 13th. So they kind of just have one game left. And then everyone's just there for the semis. So what was interesting, and I know people have commented about this because I saw on Twitter, even though I'm not active on it, I did get a glimpse of it. People were wondering why there were, there's a women's and men's quarter at 8:30 local, and then only a women's quarter at 10:30 local, and not a men's quarter. And so to answer that question, for those who may be wondering, it's because ESPN had that field that we were streaming on and had to get ready for the women's semi that was going to take place kind of not in between, but around the time that the men's quarter would have taken place. So that's why there was only one game being streamed, but they're all filmed. So if you're a subscriber, you can watch that. So, yeah.
I was able to watch the streams. I found a way.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. If you're looking for treasure, you got to go on the Ulti-World Discord. You got to go on Reddit and you will find it. But you got to do a little bit of digging and you got to ask the right people. You got to knock on the right doors. But you can definitely see, and I would recommend watching that UNC Colorado game because, spoiler, that is the closer of the two finals. And it's really exciting. Colorado played a great game and has some stars, obviously Stacey Gaskell being one of them, US Olympian too. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, that kind of wraps up the tournament. UBC coming in fifth, and a lot of people were impressed with multiple players, just hearing people talk about UBC, especially the commentators I was working with. Anna, Mika, as you mentioned, and obviously Maddie, but some of the other, like I was really impressed with, hopefully I should get this name right because I commentated, but Helena Tremblay was like tearing it up as well. Actually told her that when I saw her, I was like, you were just tearing it up on the field. So got to give kudos to all the different players on the team, not just the O-line stars, All right, so that wraps up college coverage. Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We're going to head into subscriber only. I'll share a couple stories. Nothing too spicy here, but we'll share a couple stories about the college championships and just my experience there. So if that's something that interests you, definitely head over to subscriber only. We'll catch you next time. Hopefully World Games rosters will be out by then and we can talk about it. And then we can just, keep it going. Keep the podcast alive. Keep it going. That's a goal here. Danie now back on the pod. So all is right with the world. But now, Danie, you get to just, I did the outro. So now you just plug the socials and we're going to get out of here and head to subscriber only.
We're on Instagram. That's our main home. So we're Huckin on Instagram. If you want to email us, you can do huckin@ultiworld.com. Yeah, that's it. Instagram.
Catch in the subs only if you're a subscriber. If not, you should do it. See you next time.
Salut, c'est Nina Prévost d'Iris Ultimate et de Team Canada et vous écoutez le podcast Huckin, votre guide d'un océan à l'autre pour Ultimate Canadien.